When it comes to horror storytelling, few creators are as disturbingly imaginative as Junji Ito. Since his debut with Tomy in 1987, Ito has consistently defied expectations with grotesque, mind-bending tales that push psychological horror into terrifying new territory. While his influence is firmly rooted in manga, Ito's chilling creativity could be exactly what the video game industry needs for its next horror breakthrough. In an era where most horror games fall back on overused mechanics, jump scares, dimly lit corridors, and hordes of zombies, Ito's unique brand of unsettling horror could transform the gaming landscape with something far more haunting: true originality. Junji Ito brings the unthinkable to life. Unlike typical horror that recycles familiar monsters and cliches, Ito's stories are deeply rooted in the surreal. His work doesn't just frighten, it unsettles. In Uzumaki, an entire town descends into madness over a spiral-shaped curse. In The Hanging Balloons, the sky becomes a deadly trap, as balloon-like heads stalk and kill their doppelgangers. These are not stories meant to simply shock. They are built to linger, crawling under your skin and staying there. This discomforting, imaginative horror would translate brilliantly into a game. Where many horror titles rely on sudden frights or gore, a Junji Ito-inspired game could offer a slower, more psychological kind of fear, something that builds, layer by twisted layer. It would challenge not only the player's nerves, but their sense of reality. The risk-averse nature of modern horror games. The horror genre in gaming is often limited by market expectations. Developers tend to play it safe: zombies, cults, ghosts, rinse and repeat. While effective, this sameness can breed predictability. But as games like Bloodborne, Silent Hill, and Dark Souls have shown, there's a massive audience for eerie, abstract, and philosophically terrifying experiences. If studios gave creative freedom to someone like Junji Ito, they wouldn't just get a fresh take, they'd get a cultural event. Horror fans, especially those tired of cookie-cutter experiences, are hungry for something new. A game built around Ito's work wouldn't just stand out, it would haunt players long after they put the controller down. Ito's distinct visual style could redefine game horror. Ito's illustrations are iconic. Grotesque yet oddly beautiful, his creatures and settings are filled with intricate, skin-crawling detail. Faces stretch into impossible expressions, bodies contort in unnatural ways, and environments become labyrinths of dread. In a video game, this visual language could be weaponized. Imagine exploring a decaying town in first person while Ito's signature body horror unfolds in real time. Or navigating dreamlike nightmares where each corner reveals an image worse than the last. Horror thrives on the unknown, and few understand the visual power of suggestion like Junji Ito. He's already dipped into gaming, but he deserves more. Though Ito hasn't led a game project himself, his presence is already being felt. The indie game world of horror, a retro turn-based roguelite, is an explicit homage to his work, complete with black and white sprites and disturbing, surreal monsters. He also partnered with Dead by Daylight to design cosmetic skins and collaborated with Pokémon to illustrate ghost types like Banette and Jengar in his unsettling style. These contributions, while memorable, only scratch the surface of what Ito could bring to gaming. Imagine a AAA survival horror game with full creative direction from Junji Ito himself, something narratively rich, deeply disturbing, and visually unforgettable. What a Junji Ito game could offer. A game shaped by Junji Ito's sensibilities would likely defy genre norms. It might ditch traditional combat in favor of existential threats and emotional unraveling. It could tell fragmented, nonlinear stories through unreliable narrators. It could focus on fear that's felt, not just seen. Most importantly, it would stay with players, not because of flashy action, but because of ideas that gnaw at the edges of comfort. It would be the kind of game that players hesitate to replay, not because it isn't good, but because it's too good at being terrifying. Why now is the perfect time? The gaming world is saturated with sequels and remakes. While some of them deliver, audiences are craving something innovative. With horror experiencing a renaissance across all media, there's never been a better time for Junji Ito to leave his mark on gaming. Studios like From Software, Remedy, and Kojima Productions have shown that there's room for the experimental in big-budget games. Junji Ito, if given the reins, could lead a project that not only terrifies but transforms the genre. Final thoughts. Junji Ito's work doesn't scream. It whispers in nightmares. In a gaming industry that often favors noise over nuance, his stories could mark a new era of horror, where fear isn't just a moment, but an atmosphere. A Junji Ito horror game wouldn't just be another title on the shelf. It would be a cultural landmark, reshaping how we define terror in interactive storytelling. The next horror masterpiece isn't in development. It's waiting to be imagined. And Junji Ito is the visionary to do it.